Hi, my name is Cody, and today we're going to be making Ravioli Al'Uovo, shaped like Subnautica Peeper. Now, if you don't know what ravioli or Raviolo Al'Uovo is, it is like a stuffed ravioli with ricotta cheese and parmesan and an egg yolk. Now, I was inspired to do this by Danny Loves Pasta over on TikTok. He makes amazing pasta videos all about different shaped pastas, like penguin pasta, succulent pasta, anything you can imagine he's probably turned into pasta by this point. Now for me, I really wanted to make a video game themed pasta, so that's kind of been sitting in the back of my mind for a while now, but I wasn't super inspired or in a rush to do it until I saw this video. This is Ravioli Al'Uovo, and immediately when I saw it, I thought, what if I made that, but shaped like a Subnautica Peeper, so that when you cut open the eyeball, it oozes yellow. I know, I'm just as excited as you are. On the outside, of course, it's gonna look like the Peeper. On the inside, this is what we're gonna see. So we're gonna have a ricotta filling up the main body to give it some bulk. We want it to look three-dimensional, right? I'm not gonna put ricotta filling in these fins because those fins are supposed to be flat while the main body is lifted. And of course, the main part, we want the egg yolk in the eyeball. After I sketched up this idea, I knew I had to make it, and now here we are making this video. Now, a small disclaimer, this is my first time making this dish shaped like a peeper, so I have no idea how it's gonna turn out. If you're seeing this video, it probably turns out pretty well. That being said, let's just get started. To make the pasta, we just need a few things. We're going to need flour and eggs. I also like to use semolina flour. It gives a really great flavor in the pasta dough. Now to color it, we are gonna use some blue spirulina powder. I got this idea from Danny Loves Pasta as well. And kind of the cool thing is apparently this has like a seaweed kind of taste to it. So if it does add any flavor to the pasta, which it might not, it might give it a seaweed flavor, which is very on brand for this dish. So I'm not mad about it. If this isn't a dark enough blue, I do have some food coloring on standby. I'm gonna try to use this first and see how it looks, but if needed, I'll add a little bit of food coloring to make it a little darker. For the yellow, I'm gonna be using turmeric. Turmeric has a very bright yellow color. It is very vibrant, and I think it's really gonna help that peeper eyeball stick out. Those are gonna be the two main colors. Now I do want some like dark blue, almost black parts. Gonna take some of the blue dough, dye it black, as we need it for the decals. Now normally when I make homemade pasta, I don't really measure anything, but I don't wanna mess anything up this time. So I am gonna follow the recipe that was provided by Danny Loves Pasta over on his TikTok channel. So his recipe calls for 400 grams of flour. Now I have two types of flour. I'm probably gonna split it up. I think I'll do 300 grams of regular flour and maybe 100 grams of semolina or something close to that. Okay, now that it's completely mixed, I'm gonna set it off to the side. And what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna take 300 grams, so I'm not gonna take all of it, to make the blue dough. I'm just gonna remove flour until this is down to 100 grams. Now that I've measured out about 300 grams of this flour mixture, I'm going to make a well in the middle because this is where my eggs are going to go. Okay, now that I have a well in the middle, I'm going to add 3 eggs. I bought fancy eggs for this video. You see this? Like some are brown and some are blue, and they're really cute. All right, now we're gonna be scrambling the eggs up. I am gonna throw some blue spirulina powder in here as well. I'm just gonna pour some in. That came out faster than I thought it was. I think that's enough. Wow, that is really blue. Okay, I think we're good to start mixing. So we're gonna kind of scramble the eggs in this well very carefully. And as we scramble, it'll slowly combine with the flour until we can get a dough. Okay, right away I'm having some concerns because the yellow yolk is kind of turning green, which I kind of expected. I believe I just need to add more spirulina powder so it turns more blue than it does green. So here we go. I don't know how much is too much. That might be too much. We will just keep going. All right, I think at this point I can stop using the fork and we're just gonna kind of start kneading it. Our hands are gonna get very messy. I also have this bench scraper on hand. I would just like to point out now that I'm not very good at making homemade pasta. I'm not a pro, so if you want to see a recipe of like how this is done better or properly, I will link some videos down below so you can see how to make this dish not from me. Now what we're gonna do is knead the dough for 10 minutes, which is a long time. My arms are gonna be very sore after this. All right, so kneading the blue dough is gonna take a while. I wanna start making the yellow dough. So luckily, I've acquired the help of Josh. Josh is gonna knead the blue dough while I make my yellow dough. Thank you. Let's make the yellow dough. I'm gonna use the remaining 100 grams-ish of flour mix, make a well in the middle, and we'll use 1 egg this time. To give it a really yellow color, we're gonna use turmeric. Again, I don't know how much to use. I'm just gonna throw some in there and see how it turns out. We're gonna do the same thing as before. Or you can also start to need that. Again, 10 minutes, so it does take a while.
That could have been very bad.
That could have been really bad. Okay, now that we've finished kneading these, we're gonna cover them with saran wrap and let them rest for 1 hour. All right, so while our dough rests, we're gonna go ahead and make the filling. The filling is surprisingly simple. It's just ricotta cheese, Parmesan cheese, fresh basil, and some salt and pepper. That's it, nothing fancy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do 3/4 cup of ricotta cheese. That came out surprisingly easily. Next, we're gonna add 1/4 cup of freshly grated Parmesan. Then we're gonna add some chopped basil. Now I have these little herb shears that I absolutely adore using. I don't really know how much to add, so I'm just gonna call that good. Now let's whisk this all together. All right, and I'm also gonna add some freshly ground pepper and some salt. Let's give it a quick taste test. That's just perfect. All right, here's our filling ready to be piped. I'm gonna stick it in the fridge until we are ready to use it. Okay, so I forgot to plug my mic in, so I'm just gonna have to voice over this section. Pretty much what I'm doing is I'm rolling out my pasta dough and then folding it over on itself and rolling it out again. This is called laminating the dough. I'm gonna do this before I send my pasta through my pasta machine. In the pasta machine, I'm gonna start out on the thickest setting, and every time I run it through, I'm gonna run it a little bit thinner. We wanna get this just about as thin as possible because we need it to cook super fast when it's in the peeper shape. I don't want to cook this dough for any longer than 2 minutes because I need that egg yolk to stay runny once it's done cooking. And I definitely don't want to be eating any raw pasta. We're gonna do the same thing with the blue, and as I'm rolling out the blue, I realized I made way too much dough. But the great thing about pasta dough is you can freeze it and save it for later. That's exactly what I did with the extras here. Okay, so we're back. I have all my dough rolled out. I realized I made way too much. There's huge surplus over here, but I guess that's good if we need it. Now all it's left to do is to shape the peeper, and I really don't have a very good game plan for this. I have a knife, and I have these little circle ringlet cutters for the eyeball, I guess. I'm gonna try and go based on the size of my picture. So let's see, I'm gonna try to find a ring that will match this eyeball. So this is the one we're gonna use for our eyeball. So that's just gonna give me a little bit of reference right there. I am gonna take these 2 sheets and press them together, just because I want it to be a little wider. So I'm gonna take 2 blue sheets and kind of combine them by rolling them together. So I know I want the eyeball to be this big. Let me see if I can use a ring mold to see how big like the body should be. Yeah, I think the body will be about this round and the eyeball will be about that big. This will help me determine how big I need to cut the body. So I'm gonna use this ring mold and just kind of press it in. I'm not gonna press all the way through because I don't want it to cut, but it's just gonna be a guide. So I changed the camera angle so you guys can have a better idea of what exactly I'm doing. I started to carve out the peeper shape just by hand using a knife. I used the circle cutter as a guide for how big the main body should be. Some areas I'm using the knife to cut all the way through, and other areas I'm just scraping the surface. For example, the tail area there, the pointed part, I'm just going to be scoring with a knife so I have a guide of where to pipe the ricotta cheese. I'm not going to cut all the way down because I need the fins to be attached. Now for the fins, I am going to cut these all the way through so they'll separate from the extra dough. Then we're going to cut out the fin on the top. Now that we have a basic shape, we're going to pull off all of the excess dough, including the beak, because we're going to replace the beak with some yellow dough later. Now at this point I realized that the dough is pretty stuck to the cutting board. I realized that meant the peeper was also stuck, so I started to scrape it off pretty carefully, but some parts did rip and break, but that's okay, we're going to put them back together in just a minute. But first, I went ahead and floured my surface really well so we wouldn't run into this issue later. All I had to do to fix it was just pinch all the seams back together. This worked really well, it never ended up falling apart after this. Now to get the beak, I just pressed some of the yellow dough to the blue dough and then carved out a little beak shape. Now we're ready to start piping in our ricotta filling. I'm going to start out in the main portion of the body, just making a base with the ricotta filling. Then I'm going to pipe a circle on top, but I'm not going to fill in the middle because this will be the nest for the egg yolk. Then we'll fill in the tail, and again, I'm not going to pipe any into the fins, just to give some dimension. I did use my hands here to clean up some of the piping, and I also added a little bit into the beak. Now we're ready to add in our egg yolk. I used a yolk from a cheaper egg, so it'd have a more yellow hue. The more expensive eggs tend to have more orange yolks, which I didn't really want. At this point, I wanted to brush down all the edges and fins with egg whites, but I already had egg whites all over my hands, so I just used what I had on hand. Literally. Next, I went ahead and started to cover the beak. The beak did have filling in it. I just draped it with some yellow dough and cut it off, and here is what that beak looked like. For the rest of the peeper, we're going to drape over some blue dough, and I'll start to press down on any of the edges. You can actually see some of the edges like that bottom fin there. I cut around it when I see it, and if I can't see it, I'll just lift it up to see where it should be. Once it's lined up, I'll press the edge down and cut off any excess dough. I do this around the entire peeper. You can actually see just how thin the dough is. See that egg yolk almost poking through the dough? As I'm working around, I did not cover the beak because the beak was already covered. I did cut around it so the blue and yellow would match up. At this point, we're ready to start cleaning up the edges and adding in all the finer details. First, I'm going to start by cutting out this yellow circle for the eyeball. I brush it down with some egg whites, and I'm very careful to place it on top so I don't pop the yolk. Then I just used some of the blue dough to make an iris, and I dyed some blue dough black to make a pupil. Then I went ahead and used a fork to add some texture to the back fins. This will also help with sealing the raviolo. Next, I'm going to use some more black dough to make the 3 little dots on the side, as well as add a little line onto the beak for some personality. Then we're going to cook this the only way we know how, the fabricator. And you don't have one of those, so you have to do it the old-fashioned way by boiling it for 2 minutes. Not very long because we want to keep that egg yolk runny. We'll fish him out and oh man, this peeper has seen some better days. Let's plate him up and see what he looks like on the inside. All right, the peeper is done. He looks really cute, I think. He definitely changed color while cooking. I didn't think he was gonna turn that light of a blue, so future note, I should have added dark blue food coloring. Damn it. I'm just really excited to see how the eyeball looks and if that yolk is still runny. Moment of truth. Look, the runny yolk stayed. Oh my gosh, okay. We gotta try a bite. We gotta try a bite of this. Ooh. Please give me some pasta. Ah. I'm surprised to say he's actually perfectly cooked. I love that the ricotta cheese like comes out of the body, again in almost a morbid kind of way. All right, now I did make a brown butter sage sauce. I didn't want to let it ruin the shot, so I will add it now. That way we have some sauce to go with them. All right, and that's it. We're done. We did it. I did it. I don't know. And even though this was really hard, I am so down to make way more video game pasta themed dishes and things like that. So please let me know in the comments, what would you like to see? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. And thank you for 600 subscribers. I hope we can hit 1,000 soon. You guys really motivate me to keep making content and videos like this. So thank you. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.